Welcome to Afrosphere. In the heart of southern Africa, a storm has been brewing and boiling, a tempest of indignation, betrayal, and unrelenting resolve. Mozambique, a nation once poised on the brink of prosperity, now finds itself ensnared in the vice grip of political malfeasance and systemic corruption. The recent electoral charade of October 2024 has ignited a conflagration of nationwide protests, a collective roar against the audacious subversion of democracy by the ruling FRELIMO party and its anointed figurehead, Daniel Chapo. The saga commenced with an election that was, from its inception, a stupidly orchestrated, desperate fraud. Reports from credible observers detail a litany of malpractices, voter registration anomalies, candidacy manipulations, blatant ballot stuffing, and dubious vote-counting processes. The European Union's observer mission highlighted unjustified alteration of election results at polling station and district level, a damning indictment of the electoral process. Civil society monitors, endeavoring to safeguard democratic integrity, compiled parallel tallies to detect fraud, only to be met with intimidation and obfuscation. When the National Electoral Commission audaciously declared Chapo and FRELIMO victors by a landslide, the Constitutional Council, the nation's apex legal authority, demanded substantiating evidence. In a move that would be farcical were it not so tragic, the Commission claimed to have lost all pertinent documents, rendering them incapable of justifying the proclaimed results, the most profound insult ever flung into the face of the international community. This brazen act of defiance underscores a regime that no longer feels compelled to veil its contempt for transparency and accountability. As the opposition mobilized to contest this electoral larceny, tragedy struck. In the early hours of October 19, 2024, Elvino Diaz, a distinguished lawyer and human rights defender, and Paulo Guambe, spokesperson for the Podemos party, were brutally assassinated in Maputo.
Elvino Diaz, a lawyer, has challenged election results in Mozambique's courts before. He was preparing to do it again. Political opposition members say that's why he's now dead. Gunmen fired at his car on Saturday, killing him and an opposition party official. Police have promised an investigation. The ruling FRELIMO party publicly condemned the killings. But many young people and opposition supporters say they don't trust the government. Thousands took to the streets on Monday in at least 4 cities. Police fired tear gas and bullets to disperse them. The protesters say they also don't trust the Electoral Commission. It ran polls 2 weeks ago, which observers say were marred with irregularities such as ballot stuffing and altered results. Opposition frontrunner Venancio Mondlane says he's been rigged out of a victory. He was tear-gassed too. Thousands gathered at Diaz's funeral. Rights groups say the killings are intended to intimidate those challenging FRELIMO's near half-century rule.
We're going to carry on what he always pushed us to do. And if one guy die, it doesn't mean we all have to stand down. We're going to go forward, and that is where we're thinking on doing.
The US, UN and EU have called for the killings to be investigated. Outgoing FRELIMO president Felipe Nyusi has said inciting protests can be considered criminal. Official election results are due Thursday. More protests are planned. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera.
Unidentified gunmen ambushed their vehicle on Avenida Joaquim Chissano, unleashing a hail of bullets that ended the lives of these 2 stalwarts of justice. Diaz was on the cusp of filing a legal challenge against the election results, a testament to his unwavering commitment to democracy. The pattern of these killings mirrors previous political assassinations, with state security forces implicated and a chilling absence of accountability. Since the October grand charade of democracy unfolded in Mozambique, the streets have trembled with the voices of a people long silenced. Across the nation, from Maputo to the northernmost provinces, the great mass of the dispossessed has risen, not in sudden fury, but in the culmination of years of betrayal, years of wounds inflicted with cruel precision by the hand of FRELIMO.
The young people of Mozambique have been protesting for months. they're calling for an end to the governing FRELIMO party's decade-long rule and accuse it of rigging October's election.
We are liberating ourselves. We want the government to see that we are angry.
For some, the fight for democracy has come at the ultimate cost. This is Hilario Dima's funeral. He was shot dead in November, reportedly by police forces. His father Benjamin says that protesting is not a crime.
I feel pain for my son, who was shot without doing anything. He did nothing wrong.
President-elect Daniel Chapo has called for calm. In his first speech since being declared winner, he's vowed to be a leader of all. But his rivals continue to call for demonstrations.
This war, this battle that the people are waging, is the fight for justice. It's the fight for legitimacy. It's the fight for the truth. We're seeing people on the streets asking for what they've never had. They've never had food. That's why there's a strong tendency for these people to loot shops. They're not looting because they're brutes, animals or savages. They are people who are hungry.
The unrest is being fueled by a desperate economic situation in Mozambique. A decade of stagnation has left around 2/3 of the population living in poverty. The younger generations say they are bearing the brunt of economic decline.
The young people, they want to work, they are tired. There's no work here in Mozambique, there's no job. The government make it hard, very hard. So yeah, they are not taking care on us.
80% of the population is under the age of 35. And while the protests may have started as a call for electoral integrity, some say they're now being driven by a cohort of young people demanding a better future. Sarah Gill, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
To those who walk the dusty roads of Mozambique, who have borne the weight of injustice, the meaning of this unrest is as clear as the noonday sun. But to the world beyond, to those who peer in from a distance, who know nothing of the language, the suffering, the broken promises, this uprising may appear abrupt, inexplicable. Yet history teaches us that no people suffer indefinitely without protest, that oppression, unchallenged, does not mean oppression accepted. For years the people endured. They bent but did not break. But there comes a moment when the back, too burdened, straightens in defiance. There comes a time when the cup, filled to the brim with injustice, can hold no more. This election was not the cause of unrest, but its trigger, the final insult that made resistance no longer a choice but a necessity. The election was not the storm. It was the final drop in a flood years in the making, the moment when the dam could hold no more. In the coming weeks, we will journey together through the tangled web of economic deprivation, social upheaval, and political treachery. The gathering storm whose final bolt of lightning struck in October, shattering the last illusions of Mozambican democracy. This was no sudden rupture, but the inevitable consequence of wounds left to fester, of grievances long ignored, of a people burdened beyond endurance. And so, we begin today where all decay begins, with corruption. That insidious, cancerous blight that eats away at the sinews of nations, that turns institutions into hollow shells and governance into a cruel farce. Corruption is no mere failing of men and women, but a poison that seeps into the very soul of a people until law is mocked, justice is bought and sold, and power exists not to serve, but to plunder and pillage. In the weeks ahead, we will unmask the machinery of this great betrayal, peeling back the layers of deception to reveal the hard and bitter truth. Stay with us as we unroll the script of a nation's slow unraveling and of a people's reckoning. Corruption unbound.
Something that FRELIMO failed to do is that this surveillance was not introspective. FRELIMO did not monitor itself, nor its own elements, and it was due to the lack of this vigilance that corruption infiltrated Mozambique. It did not come from external sources. Rather, it became possible through internal actions. Our exercise of vigilance, excessive as it was, against the bloodsuckers, we did not apply it to ourselves.
Corruption in Mozambique is not merely a crime, it is an affliction, it is a sickness. It is consuming cancer, a malignant rot that festers in the soul of the nation, eating away at its institutions, eroding the foundations of justice, and suffocating the aspirations of its people. It is a cancer that metastasizes, spreading its tendrils into every crevice of public life, distorting the very notion of governance until service is no longer duty, but plunder and pillage. Justice no longer a principle, but a commodity. It corrodes the body of the nation, devouring its lifeblood and leaving behind the decayed husk of a republic betrayed. It is a rot that seeps into the marrow of governance, a pestilence that poisons the wellsprings of justice, education, and opportunity. From the dimly lit corridors of public offices to the dust-laden roads where traffic police lurk like highwaymen, corruption reigns, unchecked and unrepentant. From the highest halls of power in Maputo to the dusty backroads where traffic police scavenge like hyenas, this disease is so insidious, so entrenched, that it has found its justification in a grotesque adage whispered with knowing smirks among the bureaucratic class, and codified in the language of the people. O cabrito, come donde está amarrado. The goat eats where it is tethered. Herein lies the philosophy of plunder and pillage. If a man finds himself stationed at the gate of civil service, he must exact his tribute. If he holds the pen to authorize an identity card, he must tax its bearer. If he wears the uniform of the law, he must extort those who pass under his gaze. With this philosophy, those entrusted to serve do not merely neglect their duty, they devour it. The state is not an institution of service, but a feeding trough for the functionary. And the people, long-suffering, weary, resigned, are the slaughtered livestock upon which this grotesque banquet is laid. The passport official sees no shame in extracting a bribe from a struggling worker seeking documentation. The school administrator does not hesitate to extort a desperate parent wishing only for their child to sit in a classroom. The judge weighs not the scales of justice, but the thickness of the envelope placed in his hand. The tax collector is no mere custodian of public funds, but a predator lurking in the economic shadows, demanding tribute for the privilege of simply existing. There was a time when Mozambique dreamed of itself as a beacon of possibility, a nation carved from the crucible of struggle, standing defiant against the shackles of colonial rule. But what are we now? A republic dismembered by greed, where the ideals of independence have been pawned for personal gain. Where once the people sought liberation from foreign masters, they now find themselves bound by new chains, chains forged not of iron but of deception, treachery, and betrayal. The cancer does not rest. It creeps into the bones of society, leaving behind ruins. Roads are built only to crumble, for the funds meant to pave them have been siphoned away. Hospitals are stocked with empty shelves, for medicines become the currency of bureaucratic trade. Water runs foul, schools collapse, wages disappear. All while the officials who preside over this misery retreat behind their fortress walls, insulated from the suffering they have wrought. Documents and education. Observe, if you will, the macabre theater of daily life. A woman stands before the clerk at the civil registry seeking only the rightful documentation of her child's birth. The official, eyes dulled by habitual avarice, shuffles the papers without purpose, waiting for the unspoken bribe, the illicit token that lubricates the wheels of bureaucracy. Without it, her child remains unrecognized, an unperson, a shadow in the land of his birth. Imagine a father seeking to obtain a national identity card, a fundamental document necessary for employment, education, and access to health care. Instead of a straightforward process, he is met with bureaucratic hurdles designed not for efficiency, but to necessitate the greasing of palms. Without the illicit payment, his application languishes indefinitely. This scenario is not an anomaly, but a daily reality for many Mozambicans. Studies have highlighted that a significant percentage of citizens have been asked to pay bribes to access public services, underscoring the pervasive nature of this corruption. The education sector, a cornerstone for national development, is similarly tainted. Parents are often compelled to pay bribes to enroll their children in public schools, a practice that not only burdens impoverished families, but also perpetuates inequality. Teachers, underpaid and overworked, may demand additional payments for favorable grades or even basic instruction, eroding the quality of education and the trust placed in educators. Have you ever heard of sex for grades? This is the insidious fate befallen to girls in the clutches of a good number of male teachers. Highway robbery. The traffic police are perhaps the most visible embodiment of this cancerous rot. Stationed every few kilometers, these hyenas have transformed the nation's roads into a gauntlet of extortion. Journey further, down the highways choked with dust and despair, and witness the armed sentinels of corruption, the traffic police. In every other kilometer, they stand in ambush, their black boots planted firmly not in defense of order, but in the service of their own bellies. A motorist weary from labor is flagged down. Papers are demanded, infractions are fabricated, and soon the exchange is complete. The routine stops without cause, documents scrutinized not for public safety but to extract bribes. A crisp note changes hands, and the officer, satisfied in his petty larceny, waves the driver forward until the next toll is demanded further down the road. Imagine 20,000 acts of this nature in a month from Rovuma to Maputo. Imagine each act forcibly extracting at least $2. Imagine this happening for 12 months. We'll let you do the rest of the math to understand how much taxes are extracted in this manner from the poor to fill up the pockets of these thugs. Failure to comply can result in threats, unwarranted fines, or even detention. This relentless harassment not only disrupts commerce and daily commutes, but also breeds a deep-seated resentment among the populace. The traffic police are widely regarded as one of the most corrupt institutions in Mozambique, a sentiment echoed by various reports and studies. Justice for sale. And what of justice, that most hallowed of institutions? It too lies rotting, its walls defiled by the currency of betrayal. A man, innocent or guilty, stands before the magistrate, not in hope of due process, but in knowledge that his fate is determined not by evidence, but by the highest bidder. The law is not blind, it is merely for sale, and the poor, unable to pay, are cast into the abyss. Bribes and irregular payments are often exchanged for favorable court decisions, undermining the rule of law and perpetuating a cycle of injustice. This malpractice erodes public trust in the legal system, leaving ordinary citizens feeling powerless and disenfranchised. The judiciary, an institution that should stand as a bastion of fairness and integrity, is drowning in the corrosive rot of corruption. Tax services and inspections. Gatekeepers of graft. In the realm of taxation and regulatory inspections, corruption thrives unabated. Business owners, from small-scale vendors to larger enterprises, are frequently subjected to arbitrary inspections and audits. These procedures, ostensibly conducted to ensure compliance with regulations, often serve as pretexts for officials to demand bribes. Non-compliance with these illicit demands can result in hefty fines, closure of businesses, or prolonged legal battles. Such practices stifle entrepreneurship, deter foreign investment, and hinder economic growth. Society loses, but who cares? The hidden debts scandal. A macrocosm of corruption. Nowhere is the rot of corruption more vividly displayed than in the infamous hidden debts scandal, a crime of such staggering magnitude that its consequences still weigh heavily upon the people of Mozambique. Between 2013 and 2014, government officials, cloaked in the garments of public service but driven by insatiable greed, conspired to defraud the nation of $2 billion under the false pretense of maritime security projects. This was not merely theft, it was a calculated betrayal, an auctioning of the nation's future to the filthiest bidder. When the scheme unraveled, Mozambique was left bankrupt, its currency in freefall, its people plunged into deeper suffering. Manuel Chang, the finance minister who signed the fraudulent agreements, was arrested in December 2018 in South Africa en route to Dubai, then extradited to the United States, where justice caught up with him. Yet the Mozambican government spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to shield him, proof that the thieves still protect their own. As the American authorities sought his extradition on charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering, a protracted legal tussle ensued, with Mozambique's government expending substantial resources in a futile attempt to secure his extradition back to Mozambique, ostensibly to shield high-ranking officials from potential incrimination. Chang was eventually extradited to the United States in July 2023. Opting for silence during his trial, he left his defense solely in the hands of his lawyers. In August 2024, a federal jury in New York convicted him of fraud and money laundering. Subsequently, in January 2025, he was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison, a judgment that resonated as a clarion call for accountability. There is no sanctuary, no sphere untouched by this creeping decay. The schools, where children ought to be sculpted into the architects of tomorrow, are instead barren fields where teachers demand illicit fees, and knowledge is a commodity reserved for the privileged. The hospitals, where the sick cry out for relief, are corridors of despair where medicine is stockpiled for the highest briber while the poor are left to languish. Mozambique does not suffer from corruption as a mere inconvenience. It is drowning in it, suffocated by it, strangled by the hands of those sworn to serve. And yet in Maputo, in the air-conditioned halls where the lords of plunder feast, there is no concern, no urgency to cure this affliction. For the parasites thrive on the sickness of the host, and the death of the common man and woman is but an afterthought in their feast of indulgence. At its core, this endemic corruption facilitates a grotesque transfer of wealth from Mozambique's struggling citizens to a cadre of unscrupulous FRELIMO stooges. Each bribe extracted represents resources diverted from essential needs, food, education, healthcare, to line the pockets of the corrupt. This systemic exploitation exacerbates poverty, entrenches inequality, and stymies national development. This pervasive corruption is both a symptom and a cause of a broader culture of impunity. High-ranking officials clustered around FRELIMO structures are implicated in corrupt practices. They evade accountability, emboldening lower-level functionaries to engage in similar misconduct. This trickle-down corruption creates a self-perpetuating cycle where unethical behavior becomes normalized and honest public servants are marginalized. The goat tethered to its post eats, but the field, stripped of its grass, turns to dust. And when there is nothing left to devour, the famine will come, not for the peasant alone, but for all. A nation cannot flourish while it is rotting from within. If corruption is the tether by which these goats justify their feast, then let the people cut the rope. Let the land be reclaimed from these scavengers, and let justice be planted where greed has grown. For a nation that devours itself will soon find nothing left to eat. If you have found this content illuminating, stay tuned for our next episode, which will turn its gaze on the great scramble for Mozambique, a spectacle not unlike the Berlin Conference, yet orchestrated within Mozambique itself. Here the land is diced, sliced, carved, and quartered, not by foreign hands, but by FRELIMO fat cats in Maputo, who, in their unbridled pursuit of wealth, have cast the burdens of poverty and suffering upon the very people they claim to serve. Please drop us a comment, and let's keep the conversation going. Give us your thumbs up, share with your loved ones, and don't forget to subscribe. This will motivate us to provide you with more analytical content of this nature. Thank you for watching.